Welcome to this latest Leading with Purpose podcast. This week, we should have a really interesting discussion. We're joined by Stuart Jones. He's Managing Director of First Rail Open Access. But I think for people watching and listening to this, you might recognise it because it's Hull Trains and Lumo Trains. Lots of services that lots of us will have used. And basically, that's the organisation that Stuart runs. Stuart, thanks so much for being part of the podcast. Really looking forward to not only talking more about the service, if you like, that you're running, but also particularly that social mobility angle on it. But welcome aboard, as it were. And it's probably worth saying and asking you just to give us all a little bit more information about Lumo and Hull Trains, what you do, the communities that you serve.
Yeah, thanks, Justine, and thank you very much for having me on. So Lumo and Hull Trains, as you mentioned, are open access operations. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we essentially pay to access the network, the rail network, and we're totally private organisations which take on all the risk of running the operation through the costs and on the revenue risk. And so what that means is we have to really work hard to make sure our customers come back, enjoy the experience, and ensure that we have trains of a certain loadings, which makes the business viable. So what have we done with open access over the last few years is really built that up coming out of COVID. And we've seen a really flourishing market at the moment on long distance leisure particularly. So the open access aspect of it has really meant that we've been driving forward innovative solutions to make sure that we're really attracting customers to the network.
So basically, in a nutshell, we obviously have these rail franchises that we all know that operate on the track. But I guess for people to understand it, often there's space for more services beyond what those franchises are delivering. And open access is about other providers like Lumo and Hull Train saying, well, we're willing to give some of those a go. We'll try some new connections. And we'll talk about some of the new services you've got coming later on. I guess for passengers, it's good news, isn't it, really? Because there's more choice, more competition, better services as well. Literally more trains on the track more often.
Absolutely. So essentially, it's additional services, and in some instances, to new places which aren't necessarily served by existing established operations. And we essentially look at the timetables on the network and try to understand where is there space for additional services. And so in certain instances, it's new competition, which we believe really helps to improve the overall customer product because essentially you're competing with other operators to make sure that you've got a service which is, as I said, is something which customers want to use. But also importantly, it's connecting communities which aren't necessarily that well served. And so that's particularly what we've been able to manage with Whole Trains over a number of years to really establish Whole Trains as a prominent operator for Hull and Humberside.
Of course, if people think about Hull Trains, they're thinking about the train going to Hull, but it's about the stations on that track that get served and the communities around those stations. And tell us a little bit more about, in a sense, the difference it's made to places served by that whole line over the years you've been operating. I mean, it's been going for a while now, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We're in the 25th year of operation, so it's really well established now, and we've been able to see what that's impact that 25 years of service has had. So absolutely right. It's not just the whole trains service it serves a number of communities through East Yorkshire, but then down the East Coast Main Line. But I guess we've really seen the impact. And you can see it when you're physically going through these areas. It's the amount of housing development which is subsequently evolved with direct connectivity onto the East Coast Main Line from East Yorkshire, but also then direct links down to London. So we're really seeing Howden and sort of surrounding areas there with Goole really grow over recent times, and particularly Brough. We've seen a lot of housing development come up around Brough, and developers tell us part of the appeal for these areas is actually having a direct service down to London that actually really has an important weight for those communities.
And it's almost going back to that Victorian era style of thinking, isn't it? Where these railway lines literally help build communities. And on the
Absolutely.
back of them, everything grows up. People don't just get homes and housing, as you've said, there's access to opportunity for everyone else that you're providing, I guess, on the line too.
I think, that was really felt during the pandemic. So I sort of mentioned earlier about how we've sort of been growing out since COVID, but actually it was really hard felt during that time because, as I mentioned, this is an operation which is totally on revenue and cost risk. And so through the pandemic, we had to curtail a number of services. And so then we had to really look at how we built it back out to ensure that, we're doing so in a safe way. And there was the yeah, subsequent, relevant amount of demand for travel. What that meant for those communities which we serve was actually it really did put a pressure on there with regards to that connectivity which people use every day with regards to hospital appointments, going to schools, getting to work. The whole trains really is part of the fabric within that community, and we really, you know, I think the communities and ourselves really felt that during the pandemic. So fortunately, as we've grown back out of that period, we've really doubled down and re-established that, and I think it's really, we've really seen that coming through in the customer numbers.
And it makes such a difference. And I guess the other piece of it for passengers in particular is just around affordability. And, you know, transport can sometimes be incredibly expensive for people. But I think for you, for Hull, for Lumo as well, and we should talk about Lumo in a second. That's one of the other things that you're really providing for people is more affordable train transport.
Oh, absolutely. So I probably do the two in turn. So the whole trains, we 100% are looking to try and make sure we're putting the product in there which enables people to travel, which there isn't that barrier on fare. Now, obviously, it comes down to supply and demand, but ultimately, we are looking to try and provide as much connectivity as possible, and we're looking to make sure we do that at the appropriate price. Now, with Lumo is a slightly different model to Hull. So Hull Trains is very much trying to connect East Yorkshire to the East Coast Main Line and London. Lumo is a service which runs between London and Edinburgh, stopping at Stevenage, Newcastle, and Morpeth on the way to Edinburgh. And we've subsequently just launched an extension on a couple of services over to Glasgow Queen Street. But the primary driver for the demand on Lumo is been through opening up a wider market to rail through price. And we've been very passionate about that with regards to looking at that London Edinburgh market with
Hmm.
how that's evolved with the air market and how that's enabled us really to create a product which could compete against that. We're really looking at to draw new people into rail by making sure that we've got a competitive price point and that there isn't a barrier to travel.
How else have you looked at that service in relation to getting to that new market? I mean, obviously, I think Lumo is much younger than Hull Trains. It's still, by that sense, comparatively new. What are you learning about how people are responding to this offer that you've now got for them?
Yeah. No, it's been super popular, as you mentioned. It's new. We're still in its infancy. We started operation in October 21, so just sort of coming
Hmm.
out of the pandemic, and the timing worked well with regards to sort of that confidence coming back and people wanting to get out and about. And we've really seen over those sort of 4 and a bit years strong increase in the number of travellers between London, Newcastle, and particularly London and Edinburgh. And that's both domestic and international travel. We've seen Edinburgh has been a real draw for international markets, and we've been able to cater for that. With regards to also creating new market, we really were very focused on trying to build up Morpeth. So Morpeth, if you don't know, is a reasonable sized town just north of Newcastle, but has quite a large catchment out to the east of it, and then historically wasn't particularly well served. We've seen the demand for that region really respond to having regular direct service, not only to the south to London, but also going north to Edinburgh as well.
So it's really supporting growth in Morpeth by making that a little bit more of a hub in itself for people to get onto the rail line, whichever direction they're going.
Absolutely. So there's not necessarily this need to then go down to Newcastle and interchange, but I think that's always, particularly when it comes to long distance travel, is always a point of angst with customers with having to interchange onto other services. So we've really tried to build that market up, and then I guess
Sorry,
one
go
other
on,
thing,
Stuart.
probably one other thing just to expand on there. with the December 25 timetable, which came in recently, as I mentioned earlier, we expanded a couple of services beyond Edinburgh over to Glasgow Queen Street. And that's what the early numbers we're seeing coming through there is actually people responding to that direct connectivity from Newcastle and Morpeth over to Glasgow.
And it's creating those sorts of transport networks that, we increasingly talk about for I hate calling it the North because as somebody from the North, there's a lot more to the North than just one. It's much more than one region, but I think it's about building that overall more regional northern network, the kind of network that people who live in and around London would be used to down here. And I think Lumo is clearly playing its role in doing all of that. And what really strikes me is that, in a way, in going to those underserved communities, it's genuinely become an engine for social mobility as well. In a sense, you're not, interestingly, just duplicating existing services. Part of the reason why Lumo, why Hull Trains has had its success is actually you've literally tapped into markets and people who were up for getting on the train and using rail, but just didn't feel that that was an option before. And so it's a success not just for you, but you've been successful because you're successful for them.
No, absolutely. And I think, I think the Lumo proposition has really landed well. When we embarked on the Lumo business case back in sort of 2015, whilst we started operations in towards the end of 21, actually the concept was in 2015 that it was brought together. 16, we were able then to be awarded the access to run on the network. It took then a number of years to then get to the network with the new trains being built. But what that proposition brought was something fresh, something new, and we have a single class of travel all the way through. Also, all the seats are the same, but the seats, good size, comfortable, good leg room, large tables, fold-down tables to enable people to work and access reasonable Wi-Fi. We're always looking to do better there. But what it meant was actually it's a pretty simple offer, but yet very consistent in what we're able to provide, and that's gone down very well with our customer base, and really helped, I would say, to grow that market beyond sort of the existing options out there. And I say particularly as we've been able to drive that through price points which people have been able to respond to.
So that consistency of service delivery being something that people think, I'm just going to stay using that because actually I know what I'm going to get, and actually it's something that for me makes for a better journey, more convenient, better when I'm on board, better service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, oh yeah, obviously the rail industry is in one of the key pieces which constantly needs to be reviewed and improved is how
Mm, mm.
performance is, right? So obviously, uh, reliability is absolutely key and one of the key drivers in bringing people over to rail. And obviously, is a barrier to entry for a number of people. So whilst there are a number of external events which happen on the network, we are really, really committed to make sure that we have a consistent offer. If there are issues on the network, we are still looking to run the service, but importantly, having that consistent onboard offer and to make sure that it's the best environment possible when you're traveling between long distances between Newcastle, London, Edinburgh, London.
And I guess it's worth also saying that, of course, all of this investment has meant jobs, careers in a fantastic industry. So many people joined maybe thinking, I'll do this right for the moment, for right now. But actually, as you can attest to, it end up being just a brilliant sector to build a career in.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And we've really grown these businesses. So, and then I guess the key thing about these businesses is that Hull Trains is headquartered in Hull, Lumo is
Hmm.
headquartered in Newcastle, and it's really meant we've been able to build up local jobs in those communities. And so we have
And
sorts of
local train drivers, interestingly, I think.
absolutely, which we're able to really portray the pride in those areas as
Mm,
people get on, either in Edinburgh or London, and straight away get the warm feel of you're on a northeastern service or you're on a whole service.
hmm.
But we've been really fortunate having really the communities really buy into this. So I think on latest count or head count at Hull, with sort of circa 130, 140 people there. Uh, Lumo in Newcastle, we've got 120 local people there. So across the two organisations, we're north of sort of 250 people. So it's really, really important to these local communities.
And do you feel like they've understood some of these new opportunities and maybe you've ended up with people joining both bits of the business who perhaps had never really thought about a career in rail until Lumo or Hull Trains turned up?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Lumo is a really good case of that, because obviously we went on the journey of introducing Lumo not long ago. So
Mhm,
obviously starting from a zero base, we saw a lot of people join from different industries. Majority of our workforce have come from outside of rail,
mhm.
and we're seeing a lot from services. From the leisure sector, from whether it's pubs, airlines, but very much from a customer centric, where basically very much customer facing roles, which has been really refreshing for us to be able to bring in that sort of skill set where it's very much customer first.
And tell us about some of the different roles you've got. I think sometimes I talked about train drivers, that's a skilled role. And I was going to say specialist, but what I mean is, it's a huge responsibility role, but really fascinating. But it's just one of the roles that people can have working at Lumo Hull Trains.
No, absolutely. I mean, and really, really key roles as well, right? But I think when people are experiencing that Lumo experience, the whole trains experience, it's not only the driver, but it's the onboard team.
Mhm,
And so we've got our customer experience ambassadors at Lumo who, as I said, are very much customer centric. They have come from different backgrounds, but ultimately are looking after the customer's best interests. But those customer experience ambassadors have the pathway to be able to become sort of team leaders within that field. But then also, we're starting to see our first sort of customer experience ambassadors sort of go into now sort of train drivers. So
mhm,
sort of that pathway for people to sort of come
mm.
in as an ambassador, but work your way through to be a train driver. And likewise, we're also then seeing people go back into sort of the back office, doing the sort of train planning side, marketing side. So we quite a close team, which enables the ability to sort of grow through the different parts of the business.
I remember when I was up in the Lumo office in Newcastle, and actually on travelling home, I got a chance to go in the cab with the driver. And it was really a different, interesting perspective being at the front of the train rather than looking out of a side window. But it really struck me at head office, just the logistics of running something like Lumo, the different roles people had, but actually all together, it
Yes.
really felt like quite a tight operation in that sense. There was a simulator there literally in the office that was part of some of the training that you do. And yeah, I mean, it was striking to me the variety of different roles that people can have actually if they're interested in rail as a sector.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth mentioning that these are small rail operations. And so, from a Lumo perspective, we're now running 12 services a day
Mhm.
against a larger, more established rail operator. That's a fraction of the size, but we still have to deliver all the same things as
Yeah,
a large
yeah.
rail operator. So what that means is we still need to have all the specialist skills across the team, but it
Mm,
means that
mhm.
the team is right sized to be able to, for an organisation of 12 services a day. But that does mean there's a lot of cross working, and that the teams are working very, very closely.
And just looking ahead then, I mean, obviously, you touched on it a little bit. People looking at some of those journeys they might have done by plane and air and thinking maybe it's better to see if I can just get on the train, by the time you kind of add up all the time. And it's lower carbon, I guess, and it's worth getting your thoughts on all of that. But then also what are the plans for new services and for people listening to this in other parts of the country who are thinking, "Oh, I could do with this where I am." It's probably worth just touching on that sense of people thinking, "I'm gonna switch to train," but also where do we see the services coming next, do you think?
Yeah, so if I just give you a bit of an update on where we are with the existing operation, with what we've been able to see with modal shift between air and rail.
Mhm.
as I said, London Edinburgh is a pretty big market. It was an established air market prior to Lumo introducing services in 21. We The share between rail and air on that flow was typically about one third of the market would be on rail, two thirds of the
Mhm.
market would be on air. I mean, where we've got to now, uh, with us and others who have also had have been able to improve their service as well. So we're not the only part of this, but we are a contributing factor. Has seen that the rail air split between London and Edinburgh is now much more 50-50. So that's a really material change of what we've seen in modal shift. I think what we've seen on Lumo particularly is sort of younger generation really gravitating towards rail as
Mhm.
their I wouldn't say necessarily the default, but that's their desire. That would be their desired method of transport, and we just got to make sure that we have the right price point that keeps them there. Because obviously, as we've mentioned, price is the key barrier. And then I guess what's coming? Well, we've in the process of bringing Lumo to the West Coast, between Stirling, down
Mhm.
through the central belt of Scotland, down to Motherwell, onto the West Coast Main Line, down through Carlisle, Preston, Crewe, Nuneaton, Milton Keynes into London Euston. And we're very much in the middle of mobilisation there, and we're hoping to be able to start that service sort of April, May time of this year. Now that will sort of build up, and we'll have a full service in there from June,
Mm.
and that will be around 5 return services a day on there, so a similar scale size to how we started on the East Coast. And then further along in 2027, towards the end of 27, early 28, we will be running Lumo between South Wales and Paddington, where we'll be starting service from Carmarthen, going through to Cardiff, uh, Newport, Bristol, Parkway, and into Paddington. So very much in this growth phase, and it's extremely exciting to see that Lumo brand, and we're looking forward to be able to bring it to other parts of the UK.
And I think it's just so interesting, isn't it, when we talk about some of the investment that comes into the rail sector, even in recent weeks and over the last year, what to do, for example, about this Northern Powerhouse rail style project. I think what's fascinating about some of the work that Lumo does with open access is these are new services that can come online really quickly, can't they? It's more investment, but it's investment that actually means services in April in 2027. And that's really fast improvements for passengers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So absolutely, Sterling, April 26th, we hope.
Mm, mm,
But the key thing is that we are able to deliver this quickly. So the process which we go through, obviously, we apply to the regulator as it currently stands, the Office of Road and Rail, to run services where we believe there's a capacity to do so. That process can take a while, and to be honest, it probably takes longer than it should do. But we persevere, and we try to create the best evidence to showcase how a new service could help the wider market, how it can help generate new rail market. And if we are successful, we then turn that into an operation. And what that enables us to do, once you've got the track access, we are able to go to manufacturers and go, hang on, look, got this access. We need a new train. Are we able to get a slot in the factory? Now, we've done a lot of work with Hitachi in the last 18 months. So we've been fortunate to build an order which has enabled Newton Aycliffe in the northeast to continue manufacturing. We've got our first new trains coming out of Newton Aycliffe for our Wales and Western service coming in sort of November, December 27.
which is amazing because that's supporting highly skilled jobs. Again, I've been around that Newton Aycliffe factory, and I remember talking to Hitachi Rail back in 2011, 2012, when they were first considering their investment. I mean, it's just fantastic to see where that factory has got to, the skills, the jobs it's creating, and really great that Lumo and Hull Trains can be part of the demand side for British built trains by, highly skilled workers based right here.
Yeah, absolutely, and the further the wider supply chain as well, because I'm conscious it's not
Indeed.
just the Hitachi plant, but it's also the supply chain feeding into that, which we've been able to really I say create this order of scale because we've got a number of growth things which we are looking to do through open access. And as you say, from a rail perspective, the timeline actually is pretty quick, and we can actually see some material change in a timeline where I think people are willing to sort of to get on board with, right? So we aren't talking about, okay, we're bringing these improvements in 5, 10 years' time. These improvements are coming over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think, you talked about the process for getting sign off on these. And of course, I think the skill is to genuinely make that whole ecosystem of open access, Great British Railways work as a whole. But there's no doubt that if we can do that, then you're really able to add value to the services that people get. And indeed, as we've just heard, add investment for some key industrial capacities that we want to keep, including rail making capacity and train making capacity. So I think generally it's an absolute win-win. And, looking ahead, there's a lot of policy change, there's a lot of regulatory change. Where do you see almost the opportunities for Lumo to have and Hull Trains to have that next phase of your growth, to be able to sort of look beyond the lines that you're bringing to passengers already, and what might be next? In a sense, what are the barriers that you need removed? Where are the regulatory opportunities, do you think?
Well, yes, obviously with the introduction of GBR, I think that's really positive for
Mhm.
the industry and for the customer. I really do think that helps bring some direction back into the industry, and so I think that's really, really helpful. But we are, obviously strong proponents of open access being complementary to that. And actually we've seen on the East Coast Main Line some really, really strong growth. And the passenger numbers on the East Coast Main Line outstrip anything else for that we see on the network from a long distance perspective. And we believe that competition has really helped that. So I think where we are is that, we're in the position of the rail bill going through at the moment. And what we're really trying to ensure is that the open access sort of has a fair voice in that sort of GBR environment. What we want to ensure is that there's sort of fair access to the network, and that the charging regimes around that are fair and proportionate. Because I think actually there's still a lot of opportunity out there for us to be able to replicate that East Coast model elsewhere in the UK. Because I think we've seen it in the passenger satisfaction numbers, where actually all operators on the East Coast Main Line score very highly. Importantly, we've also seen it coming through in the passenger numbers, and I think there's a real opportunity to bring that to the wider part of the UK network. And obviously, I've mentioned we've got our Stirling service coming and the South
Mm.
West service coming, but that does, there's potential to do more beyond that. And as we've mentioned, it's an ability to bring investment into the railway as well.
And just, I mean, I guess the final area and question from me really is just about your role in all of this. Obviously, you've had a fantastic career, but for people who are thinking, this has huge impact, it has impact on communities, clearly, impact on jobs and skilled jobs, it's such a positive story, isn't it? What's your advice to people who are wanting to also sort of approach their roles with that sense of leadership, that sense of purpose, looking at that broader social value that they can help push forward with what they're doing?
I think it's understanding the opportunities which
Mhm.
what you're doing can help unlock. And so, I mean, what I've been very passionate about in our existing whole trains and Luma businesses is making sure that we are really integrated into our communities by doing a lot of local partnerships. And through that, helping those local businesses help to elevate their profile, but also help improve the quality of our product. And so to me, it's been really making sure you've got the right partnerships that actually you guys you're working together to help raise not only the profile of each other's products, but also the collective for that region as well. Which I think if I look at what we've been able to achieve with Lumo in the northeast and then whole trains and whole, I'm really, really proud of that aspect of the business.
Yeah, so putting it really at the front of your mind, and just taking the time to think through the opportunities, and I guess for rail in particular, it's just right at the heart of the fabric of so many of our lives day to day that, you know, it's sort of obvious that done well and done with communities, it can just have a massive social value, can't it?
It's a huge enabler. It's a huge enabler. I've always been passionate that it enables social mobility, economic growth, and opportunity ultimately by having, I say, coming back to a consistent connectivity which people can rely on at the right price. It unlocks huge opportunity.
And just finally, did you always want to go into rail, Stuart? Was that something that you focused on early on in your career, or how
No,
did your journey here work?
yeah, so my journey, so I've always been a numbers person, so I was very much a
Mhm.
mathematician, and then sort of went into the world of consultancy, and sort of narrowed down into transport, um, and I'd always sort of have a passionate about people moving from A to B, and I guess sort of the enabling factors of that, as we just mentioned, with what that then does with growth, um, and it's sort of rail kind of aligned with my passion there. So, and I've subsequently been in the sort of transport industry for 18 years, coming on 19 years, and it really is a great industry to be part of. Uh, Constantly evolving. And I really believe that rail is a key enabler to help wider society and crucially social mobility.
Absolutely couldn't agree more. Stuart, it's been brilliant having you on the Leading with Purpose podcast. So, Stuart Jones, MD of First Rail Open Access, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Justine. Thank you for having me.